Kick the habit, lads. This is my Range Rover. I've wasted 5 years waiting for the perfect time to start a restoration. Well, I'm going for it, and you're going to see every step of the process in detail. I'm not a mechanic or a panel beater, I'm just a guy who loves to drive, and I have to save the car that's been more like a partner in crime than just four wheels. And while I'm at it, there's a little something else in the picture. Okay, there's two more, and yes, I have an addiction, but what the hell, if I don't kill myself, it could just work out great. And the road awaits. Yo, we're back for episode 3. No, this is not mine, and no, I haven't finished. This is a JPS Esprit, or to give it its correct title, a World Championship Commemorative Edition. And it's an S2 just like mine, but this thing in this trim was made in really, truly small numbers. It sits in an Irish collection now alongside some truly illustrious cars, where it should be. But I went with the owner to the UK to help appraise this a few months back when he was considering buying it. And the guy we met, the original owner, turns out to be a prolific guy on the car scene in the UK and has written numerous books on Lotus history and Lotus racing history. So, unprepared as I was, I interviewed him, and we are going to see that later on, but we're going to go now straight into the Range Rover. Just before that, Lizzie, KOB, and the guys here where I am at Flawless Detailing, thank you for your pledges on Patreon. You are genuinely helping to keep this going. Okay, Range Rover. Okay, I meditated a little after pulling out the original sills, and then I was ready to start test fitting the new aftermarket sills. They were around €450, including a pair of rear outer arches and carriage from the UK. It's the only significant spend so far. Okay, you see here I'm castellating the join between the outer sill and the floor so that if a weld were to crack it'd be less likely to travel. And there's a little A-pillar repair. Now I drilled the bottom edge of the sill with an 8mm bit to maximise the surface area of the plug welds. I'd already measured the average distance between the original sill spot welds, and then I halved it. Now when the old sills came out, everything sat down. It wasn't difficult to jack the body back up to the right position so that everything lined up. It all went really well. Really easy actually, having made a few measurements and test fittings. And I knocked the tops off all these plug welds, and I'm wondering why now. Having done things this way, I know in future I'd use a joddler to make a joint repair like this, and I did look for a cheap one, but it just wasn't in the budget. Now this part of the front seat base needed a repair, and happily it's now extra bracing in the joint on the floor. This block of wood is one of the few I made up to keep the inner and outer sills square to each other while I made the initial tack welds. And you see I filled every second plug weld initially just to get everything secure. This is the rear end of the near side sill, and I had to make a finisher. There are panels available, but I couldn't afford them. And the compound curve I made in this, it was just really gratifying to make. The 4 holes you see here are to tie the panel into the body mount at the rear of the inner sill. Now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. This is the floor to the rear seat base, and it was rotten. But while I was welding a new section in, the vibrations knocked the camera out of focus. This little cutout is to allow for a nut grommet that holds the sill tread plates. It needs to be a square hole, but the metal is too soft for a broach, so I'll probably have to do this by hand, I'd say. The side of the seat base was too tight to get the grinder in, so I just worked the metal until it fatigued and cracked. A little CAD work, as one of the Land Rover guys put it, cardboard aided design. So that's it. It almost looks too easy considering I just replaced the structure of one side of a Range Rover. Next time I'll get into the rear arch on this side. Alright, now we're getting somewhere with the Range Rover, and I think what's to come will really pique your interest. Now this thing, I said before I was worried that I couldn't get the proportions of it on camera. These sitting down shots, they really help, but I took some footage of it while we were on the way to a meet a while back, and I got some nice footage of this moving, but I got one shot in particular that really starts to paint a picture of the scale of it, you know, how it sits. So let's go and have a look at this thing on the road. You know, there's an old saying that goes, many's a good day starts at Flawless Detailing. Now how's that for a shameless plug? This is one of the JPS stable mates, and I thought this S2000 might make a good camera car. That didn't work out. We made a quick pit stop, and here's that shot that gives you an idea of the size and shape of the Esprit. So anyway, we got some fuel and hit the road. And that's it. Now, the owner of this car wants to put a few inaccuracies right. There's just a few little details that are incorrect on the car, nothing major. So we're going to track its progress. I'll leave you with this thought. How come when you meet people in car parks, it often ends up down in the woods? Alright, this is a natural point to get into my Esprit, and what I did this time was get into the interior and start at the dash and the instruments. Let's start with the steering column and those stalks. What you'll see here as the column comes out, there's a bit of a problem. The collapsible mesh has sheared from the main column and it's coming apart. I'll get you footage of that ASAP and we'll repair it. Okay, here goes nothing with the dash and the instruments. I'm told the main fascia can be brittle, so I was going very gingerly here. There's nothing like a nice old set of Smith's gauges. I was surprised at how light the speedo and rev counter were actually. I'm wondering, did Lotus use standard units? I'll talk to you about the upholstery job another time. It was done by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. There's no doubt about that. The thing is, they weren't so diligent with the reassembly of the instruments. I was really chuffed to find that the fuel pressure gauge is mechanical, but I suppose they probably all were in this era. No big problems during the rest of the dismantling. One of these clasps for the rev counter and its knurled nut just weren't put back. And the loom to the instruments was cut and reconnected rather than disconnected properly. Now, there was some surface rust on the gauge tops here. I didn't like seeing this because there's a metal beam that braces the whole car. It's what the dash sits on, and other owners undertaking restorations have peeled back the dash to find that the beam is completely rotten. This whole exercise was a binnacle. It took a long time. I wasn't going to rush it and risk breaking something, but in general everything was in decent order, certainly savable. Okay, you've noticed I haven't labelled anything. That's because I'm going to systematically follow and test every wire in this loom, properly repair all the cuts and make sure it's 100%. Now these red plastic connectors and these blue plastic connectors, they're Satan's work and the preserve of the lazy mechanic. Don't use these. They're unreliable and they're a weak point in any loom, and it's where moisture can get in. Alright, I'll admit it, you're only getting about a day's worth of Esprit stripped down this time, but we're Lotus rich this episode, so deal with it. It was too late to get into stripping the rest of the dash out, so I set about pulling some of the trim. All very easy and super simple, love you Lotus, but the material on the near side A-pillar trim had gotten bonded in, presumably when the windscreen was replaced at some point, maybe when it was resprayed. I had to get a blade in there and put a nick in it so I could rip it. Mission accomplished. I'm still on the case trying to chase up the history of the car. Hopefully we'll get some background soon. Alright, I'll leave it here with this neat little plate in the glove box giving us the tyre sizes and pressures. It also seems to suggest I can have a passenger up to roughly my own weight. It's never going to happen. Now it's time to meet Graeme Cocks, the previous owner of this car, its restorer and the author of those Lotus books that I spoke to you about. Now, I didn't expect to interview anybody, and when he started talking, I was grappling for the camera because he was instantly engaging. I took so much footage. It won't all fit in this episode. We will meet him again, but for now, I think there's some lovely stuff here. Well, a storm grounded our first attempt to go and see the JPS Esprit, but when we finally arrived at Graeme's lovely 400-year-old home, we didn't waste much time getting up to the garage. Now, I was really excited because I'd read that Graeme had an original Lotus 11, but when I got there, the cupboard was bare, it had been sold. I had to know more though, so after the two gents had been for their test drive of the Esprit, I got stuck into Graeme for some answers about his 11 and his Lotus racing exploits.
The 11 was a real purpose-built racing car. I first started racing in 1961 on a Triumph TR3. And it was just a car you took round a track. And then we bought a Lotus 11. And it was just like having a purpose-built car that was designed to go around a track. They were so quick and so nimble, and they held the road absolutely magnificently. And the following year, after I had the Lotus 11, I then had a works Sebring Sprite, and I raced in the GT class, and it just wasn't the same. It was a road car trying to go around a track, which is where I got the idea to convert a Lotus 11 into a GT car. Because I then bought back my 1962 Lotus 11, but with Lotus approval I then built the GT design body for it, and the thing drove like a Lotus 11, but it was up against sprites and midgets, and it beat them all. And it was just a magnificent car, the 11. Now, after I sold the Sebring Sprite, I said that's the class to race in. If I had a Lotus 11, I could beat all the Works Midgets and the Sebring Sprites easily. And but you needed to get the car homologated for that, which is why I needed to get it built by Lotus. So I took my designs to Colin Chapman, looked at the pictures and said, bring me finished drawings. Well, that was it. 10 minutes, it was finished. And I went back about a month later with all these finished technical drawings that I'd got. Yeah. And again, he kept me waiting only 20 minutes this time. He was just as rude. And he said, you got those drawings I asked for? And I said, yep, here they are, sir. And he said, bloody ugly, isn't it? And that was it. End of conversation. Oh, can I get it built? Oh yeah, get it built and go and win something with it. And that was it. End of conversation.
And did you? Did you win?
Oh yeah. In 1964, we entered 15 races and we got 11 awards. Best season I ever had. It was absolutely terrific. And then I designed another one for 65. And again, I got his approval again, but I didn't see him this time. I saw Fred Bushell. And anyway, it was all finished. It was styled a bit more like 250 LM Ferrari. And it got 9 third places in a row. And there were Lotus 11 GTs everywhere by then.
Did word come down that he was pleased, or?
No. I homologated the car under Appendix J Group 3, which was up to 1150cc sports and Grand Touring cars. And sure enough, 15 races, we were placed 11 times. And we were the only competition that year really was a thing called a Diva, which was another space frame built chassis with a Ford engine that was light and very purposeful. I mean, a specially designed suspension. Chapman's forte was suspension design. I mean, he built a triangulated steel tubular chassis that was absolutely rigid and flexible suspension, so that the suspension did all the work and the car stayed level on the ground and just went whizzing around the corners absolutely superbly. And that's what all Chapman's designs were. Let the suspension do the work to get the car around the corner. It's a very simple philosophy. I've kept the Esprit because I haven't sold it yet. But I will sell it. But again, you can feel the car. It is all Chapman design. The suspension does all the work. The car sticks to the road. It goes round the corners as if on rails. It's pure Lotus engineering underneath it, which is why it's such a joy to drive. The Elite, I've come very late to Elites. I never liked them when they first came out because they were fiberglass. I mean, I never thought a fiberglass monocoque body with the suspension tacked on the outside was ever a good idea. I preferred a space frame chassis. But I must admit, now, I think they're a terrific car. And the other thing is, the body design is such that the coefficient of aerodynamics is equal to a McLaren M6. And I can drive along with no window in the driver's side and get no air coming in through the window. Aerodynamically, the car picks up the air and carries it over the body just so smoothly and so easily. And it's a small, lovely little nimble car. And I don't know why I didn't like them in the first place.
So the 11 wasn't. The 11's aluminium, is it? Aluminium body.
Steel frame and aluminium body. In 1958, Colin Chapman and Graham Hill actually went to Shell Composites on a 2-week course to learn about fiberglass, and they came back and they then had some moulds made, and the Works Lotus 11s for Peter Ashdown, Keith Hall and the other driver, I can't forgotten his name, Cliff Allison, were fiberglass bodied. And that was Lotus's first experiment in 1958 with fiberglass. And in 1959 they were designing the monocoque body for the Lotus Elite, which was a huge step forward. This is over in 1964, and Red Hill Aerodrome was an ex-RAF aerodrome, and there were lots of bits of old aircraft lying around at the dump over the far side, including several of these long tubular drop tanks, all in aluminium. And we didn't even ask to buy one. We carried it over there late one Saturday evening and cut it up with a grinder, and the curved sides of it made us the sides of the back body of the 11 GT for free.
Jackman never knew that, but he would have approved, I would say.
Oh, he would have done, yes. I haven't found that. I mean, you just stay away from other cars, but normally you're going so fast you are anyway. I found the Esprit a really nice car to drive. It's pure Lotus. Its engineering is good. Its seating position is like driving an armchair around it. You fit it like a glove. It's a lovely seating position, and the car responds well. It's not an overly powerful engine. It could do with a lot more power, but performance-wise, you can cruise at 80 and 90 quite happily, and you can go around a corner as if you're on rails.
Chatting to people like Graeme makes you feel like you were born in the wrong time. He will feature again really soon and tell us about his flying career and building Rolls-Royce Merlin engined cars. That is it for episode 3. Before I go, Graeme's books. The link to these will be in the description to his website. This is the history of the Lotus 23 and the history of the Lotus 6. They're just 2 of his books. And whereas I wasn't big up on Lotus history, I certainly feel like I know something now. And I've a new appreciation for the marque, having read about how it started, and really the roots are in racing. And I think they probably still are. They build race cars. These are essentially race cars. I got some leads from those books too. There was an Irish Lotus 23 racer back from the 23's heyday, and he raced his cars all over the world. He seems to have been very, very much into it. I'm going to try and find him if I can, if he's still around. There was also mention of the fellow who was the original Lotus 7 test driver, and he had a shoe company and made driving shoes as far back as at least as the early 60s, and I think there's a little bit of something I can bring you there too. I'd also love to bring more Land Rover external content in, so if you've got something going on in Ireland and I can get to you, I would love to. Please get in touch and I will try and come and get some more stories. Until I see you the next time, I hope you're working on your cars. I hope you're having fun. Please like, please subscribe, and please share. It's very important to me, as is any contribution you can make on Patreon. The link is also in the description. Until we see each other again, good luck.